Good morning. Mass timber presents a unique opportunity because it can help meet three critical needs in Canada. It can support the drive to net zero buildings, it can help address the housing crisis, and it creates good jobs in rural and Indigenous communities. At the Transition Accelerator, we focus on how Canada can prosper in a net zero future. We work with government, industry, and other stakeholders to identify and advance opportunities for Canada. As the processing of natural resources into advanced chemicals, materials, and products is emerging and scaling as new sources of growth and prosperity in the global economy, we identified mass timber as a priority clean competitiveness opportunity for Canada more than 2 years ago. Why? Countries are racing to harness mass timber's economic and environmental benefits. Canada has excellent wood resources and expertise all along the supply chain. Demand for mass timber beams, panels, and buildings is growing and strong. Manufacturing boosts long-term economic success by increasing productivity and growth. So, at a time when we're concerned about lagging productivity in Canada, as well as the need to build housing faster, mass timber just presents itself as a golden opportunity. So in 2023, together with FPAC, the Canadian Wood Council, the Energy Futures Lab, we convened more than 50 participants from Canada's mass timber value chain, from forestry and wood supply to manufacturing to architecture, design, and on to construction. Participants came from all sectors of the economy and society, business, government, research institutes, Indigenous communities, and NGOs. And together, we co-created the Mass Timber Roadmap, advocating for a strategic approach to forestry resources, treating forests as a national resource instead of just a commodity. Now, the vision is ambitious, to almost triple the mass timber market to $1.2 billion by 2030 and double again to $2.4 billion by 2035, driven by demand in Canada and the US. Scaling Canada's share of the expected growth in the mass timber market requires coordinated efforts to address three critical areas that have been laid out in this roadmap. One, create a public-private collaboration to develop and advance a policy package, one that will add value to Canada's forest resources while building homegrown capacity along the supply chain. Two, standardize building archetypes, wood specifications, and connectors across the whole supply chain. Three, formulate and implement a skills development plan that covers all aspects of the supply chain. The roadmap details the intermediate goals, the strategic assessment, and the priority actions for governments and stakeholders to take this forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, and thanks for joining us. My name is Derek Nighbor. I'm President and CEO of Forest Products Association of Canada. And I'm here to share that this mass timber roadmap is critically important to Canada's forest sector workers and the future of forestry-dependent communities across the country. And I'd like to thank Derek Eaton, who just spoke from the Transition Accelerator, his colleague Dr. Bentley Allen at the Transition Accelerator, and Pong and his team at the Energy Futures Lab for their efforts on this important project. And to put it simply, Canada has an opportunity to compete and win in mass timber, and we need a coordinated work plan with the federal government to help get us there. The Mass Timber Roadmap establishes clear and achievable goals for 2030 and 2035 and reflects the chicken and egg scenario we currently find ourselves in. Manufacturers will invest if they see market certainty for the long term. Developers and designers are excited about the prospects of mass timber, but they want to make sure that they can get access to the products they need at the right time, at the right price. So today's release of the roadmap is about trying to create those conditions to build a world-class mass timber manufacturing industry here in Canada, and also to overcome the head start that the Europeans have on us. And we also know we can't do it the way the Europeans have. We're a much bigger country. We don't have the benefit of close proximity of our forests to our cities. So integration, full value chain collaboration are going to be very key to building a world-leading, made-in-Canada mass timber industry and workforce of tomorrow. The report highlights an anticipated annual growth rate of the North American mass timber market of about 13–14% per year for the next few years. And we have have the resource base and the sustainable forestry practices to more than meet this demand right here in Canada. So as our sector continues to face trade pressures, and these are very real for our workers and the communities that they live and play in, the pressures related to softwood lumber dispute, growing global protectionism, tough competition for investment dollars given the incentives of the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, FPAC, Forest Products Association of Canada, sees a real opportunity here. For the federal government to work with us, to stand with our workers, move forward with investment tax credits, incorporate recommendations from this document into the greening government strategy and into the forest bioeconomy strategy. So I'm going to turn a little bit to GHG emission reductions and circularity, and I'll now ask my colleague Kate Lindsay, SVP and Chief Sustainability Officer with Forest Products Association of Canada, to take the stage. Okay.
Thank you, Derek. We're really pleased to be here and to see the launch of the Mass Timber Roadmap, as mentioned. Want to thank again the excellent collaboration with Transition Accelerator, Energy Futures Lab, Canadian Wood Councils, and colleagues at FPAC, not to mention the numerous mass timber supply chain experts that provided valuable insights on how to scale up mass timber here in Canada through this process. Increasingly, we see more awareness and focused action on decarbonizing the built environment and the construction sector. Last year at COP28 in Dubai, Canada, along with 16 other countries, committed to an initiative for greening construction with sustainable wood. At that same conference, I was very privileged to join colleagues to launch a forest sector roadmap toward net zero, looking at the entire value chain of forest products, supply chain from the forest to the product end of life. What is really exciting about this particular roadmap launch is it's often hard to quantify the carbon mitigation benefits as a result of product substitution and using more wood, particularly in buildings. Hence why we were so pleased to collaborate with Transition Accelerator on this project, on what it would take to scale up mass timber here in Canada. Value-added forest products are a clear opportunity to support a lower carbon economy. In particular, as Derek mentioned, leveraging some advantages we have here in Canada. We have more hectares certified here as sustainable forests in Canada than any other country in the world. We look forward to the implementation of this roadmap, which will help decarbonize the built environment and support a transition to a more circular economy as well. Thank you again. I'll now turn things over to Rick Jeffery.
Thank you, Kate. My name is Rick Jeffery. I'm the CEO and President of the Canadian Wood Council. I too would like to thank everybody who was involved in this project. It was a year and a half of work, Bentley, or Derek, that's I think shows up in the report. I'm just going to pick up on a couple of themes that my colleagues spoke about earlier. I had the pleasure of going to Europe just before Christmas for a couple of weeks to visit all the mass timber manufacturers in Europe to see how they were doing it there and what they were doing. They've got about a 15-year head start on us, and so there was lots to learn from them. And what we did learn is that we're behind the curve, and so this roadmap is really going to help us with our competitiveness in a global sense. But more importantly, it's going to allow us to bring mass timber into the challenges that are facing Canada here around net zero and the affordable housing crisis. And so what we learned is that mass timber has a role to play in creating affordable, livable cities, towns, municipalities, and communities in Canada. It can provide a low carbon and affordable housing solution. The market in Canada is beginning to demand this and demand these low carbon options. And so the roadmap is going to give us the ability to have a structured way to try and move our supply chain to start meeting that demand for that low carbon affordable housing and for low carbon construction in Canada. As Derek Eaton mentioned and Kate highlighted, we have sustainable forests here. We have a supply chain that's sophisticated, and so we're now on the cusp of being able to use this roadmap to drive more mass timber production and use in Canada. And so we look forward to working with the federal government, the industry, and our colleagues to drive this roadmap and see more mass timber in construction in Canada. Thank you.
Derek Sneakus with National Observer. You rightly say you need the government's ear, obviously, to accelerate from a position of 15 years being behind the curve, 15 years behind the curve. The construction industry obviously needs the same. The renewable energy industry needs the same. Mining needs the same. There's a reindustrialization taking place in this country. You talk about integration within the timber and forest products sector, but again, how do we integrate more broadly, as part of this reindustrialization?
Yeah, I think multi-departmental engagement, whole of government. I think one thing we haven't seen as well in forestry that some of my colleagues in steel and mining and chemistry and cement have seen is more kind of whole of government, whole of sector approaches to drive decarbonization and to create jobs and grow the economy. I think in forestry we've seen little bits of forestry solutions in the emissions reduction plan. I think we've seen a little bit of forestry solutions in the national adaptation strategy, but we need to see more. And we're not just a bunch of tree planters. We plant trees really well. We do about 600 million a year, but we're more than that. We can help decarbonize other sectors. We can lower the carbon footprint of our own sector, and we can further decarbonize the communities that we live in. So I think there's a huge opportunity. As I said, the greening government strategy is upon us. There's work at NRCan, Natural Resources Canada, on a forest bioeconomy strategy. But I'd love to see Natural Resources Canada, Environment Canada, Finance, ISED coming together to rally behind forestry workers in this country, not only to decarbonize, but also to create and grow jobs in our sector across the country. And we're northern and rural. And a lot of the communities we operate in, we're the only game or the biggest game in town. And we need to do more to support those communities.
Darius, just to follow up, one of the main recommendations of the report, of course, is to create this private-public partnership. And so we want to bring government, as Derek says, to the table in a big way, but we also need to bring the construction sector, which needs to innovate. We need to bring the developers to the table. We need the whole supply chain there to work on this, to get that standardization that we talk about, to deliver the skills training that we need to talk about. So it's not only just government, it's the industry has to step up to the plate too, and that's the call to act, one of the calls to action here.
Well, since you raised it, maybe we can just to tease out a little further on that. If you speak to a lot of the architects, I'm writing this piece, as I mentioned, on sustainable construction, that's where they see a real potential for springboard is in that PPP sort of model. That is, say, people, the builders, the constructors, the developers, the operators, the architects, all around the table from the outset. Whereas in another scene, historically, we've had a much more sort of vertical orientation, if you like, around project development. Is that where you see it really, taking hold?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the entire construction industry is facing an existential challenge. We've got to reduce the GHG footprint from construction, and so we need to bring all parties together in that regard. FPAC is working with colleagues on the Buy Clean strategy. We need to talk to government about procurement. And then the private sector, as you mentioned, architects, engineers, developers, all coming forward saying, hey, we need to get to low carbon. How does wood fit into this? And so we can bring our technology, our experience, our expertise to the equation to say, here's where wood should fit into this, solving these issues. So.
When you talk to developers, right now net zero for buildings is about efficiencies, not about embodied carbon. And if you speak to, I don't know, green steel or cement manufacturers, again, there's just nothing being done it's progressive, but it's not accelerating yet. I mean, embodied carbon is a big piece of it.
Exactly, and so having progressive policies around low embodied carbon, we see some municipalities moving towards that. We also see recently a coalition of general contractors, pushing forward. That's where we need to see leadership, and often it's coming from municipal governments, provincial governments, federal government as well, and it's having the data available on life cycle analyses of different products and what's called EPDs, environmental product declarations, and just ensuring that as we have more production of mass timber and different sub-products within the mass timber, that those we have the appropriate data sets to support those low embodied carbon policies that are being put forward at the municipal level. I don't know, Rick might have more to speak on. Yeah. Thanks, Darius.
Suppose we could touch on the skills side, the skills and jobs. I don't know who wants to address it. I mean, but again, any sector we look at now, there's this reindustrialization meta theme. We don't have the men and women properly educated, trained, skilled up for any of what's coming, whether it's mining or forestry or for that matter, energy.
Yeah, sure. So, part of CWC's remit is to reach out to provide educational content. So we're now in universities, working in the architecture and engineering schools, making sure there's wood modules in there, and how to build with wood. We've done some labor market assessments around what needs to happen to grow this sector. So we have a sense of what we need to do for mass timber installers, for architects, for engineers, for construction companies on how to train them. We're reaching out to places like George Brown College, BCIT, to talk to them about supporting them with materials so that they can be teaching the next cohort of construction workers and building designers or the design community on how wood fits that. So there's ongoing work, and I think through this roadmap we'll be able to identify the high priority areas for this and be tailoring our offerings to that, not only from CWC but from other parts of government, so whether it be provincial, federal. So we have a bit of a roadmap on that because we've got the labor market information. We know the different skill sets that we're going to need to train for, and we've started down that pathway. But there's lots more work to do.
Last question for Derek Eaton, just from the Transition Accelerator standpoint. Obviously when we talk about the energy transition, now increasingly we're talking more meaningfully about the industrial transformation coming with it, but there is a just transition potential here, right? That we talk about northern and rural communities, talking to indigenous communities, we talk about next generation of Canadians coming through. This reindustrialization process has the potential, to kind of reinvent Canada like it did almost, in the mid-60s, frankly, to really think about the country differently in terms of what natural resources mean and what we can do to not exploit them, because that's the term when we use in oil and gas, but, to fully capitalize, should we say, on what's happening here.
Absolutely. I mean, one reason we identified mass timber as a clean competitiveness opportunity for Canada is particularly the benefits it offers for various regions across the country. There is potential to develop and scale the mass timber manufacturing sector in various parts of the country. And if we think back to forest management as well, there are clearly job opportunities here, higher value added job opportunities in the manufacturing stage for many rural and even indigenous communities. So that's one reason. That's one very important reason why we were attracted to this area, or identified it really through our analysis as a high priority opportunity area. And as Rick Jeffery just mentioned, there's a skills development side to that has to go hand in hand through the creation of what we term a mass timber alliance or a task force, this public-private collaboration across levels of government, across sectors, to take this forward. But this really is a golden opportunity for Canada. We have such fantastic natural resources, and we have the expertise and skills to scale this sector with benefits for many parts of the country. Do you want to add something? Or? No, that's good.
That's good.
Merci. This concludes the press conference.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.